Congressman Greg Steube, member of the House Ways and Means Committee and the Weaponization of Federal Government Subcommittee. Congressman, we're pleased to have you today, especially with this breaking news. So let's try to break down so our viewers understand what this deal looks like. Some people are critical of it already. It comes in two phases, 33 hostages released first, but there's that prisoner swap of the Palestinian prisoners that are in Israel. Then there's phase two. It begins on the 16th day of that implementation. Some are wondering what the lag is and why that's necessary for more negotiations. I recall when President Trump said all hell will break out if the hostages were not released by the time he was in office. And of course, he is set to be inaugurated on Monday.
Well, and that's the key, isn't it? If Donald Trump wasn't elected in November, none of this would have been happening. 466 days have gone by with hostages being held by Hamas, and the current administration has sat by and quote unquote negotiated and gotten zero results. Donald Trump gets elected, sends the truth a couple weeks ago saying all hell's going to break loose if the hostages aren't returned, and lo and behold, days before he's inaugurated, suddenly there's a deal. This would not have happened but for President Trump's leadership. He's not even in the White House, and this is happening. Obviously, it's great for the families of the hostages. It's great for the peace in the Middle East, and it would not have happened but for President Trump's leadership.
I agree with you on that, but let me ask you about the other side of the equation, Congressman. What I'm seeing is you're talking about 30 Palestinian detainees being released for every civilian on the Israeli side, 50 Palestinian detainees for every Israeli female soldier. In other words, there are going to be a lot of Palestinians released in this deal. And we know full well that many of those will be Hamas terrorists, which I think many people in Israel are not happy about, sir. How do you think about that in the context of the whole deal and what that means for Israel going forward with this pause we have right now?
Yeah, and I agree with you. And I, of course, just reading the details as you're reading the details. But here's the difference. The difference is on Monday, we're going to have President Trump in the White House. It's going to take a very different approach to the Middle East. He's not going to be giving $350 million to Hamas through Gaza repatriation. He's not going to be opening up $6 billion to the Iranians like the Biden administration did, that is harboring and funding terrorism across the world. That's going to be the difference. So I think Israel is willing to give and take on some negotiations, knowing that we have a strong leader coming into the White House, that American leadership is back, that America is going to be behind Israel. And if Hamas is going to conduct terrorist activities, whether it be in the Gaza Strip or elsewhere, that this president and our administration and the Trump administration is going to react very differently to that, not giving them money and going after them aggressively. So I think Israel's trying to count on the fact that we're going to have strong leadership back in the White House, knowing they have to give a little for that to get a deal in place so that they have peace.
And Congressman, you mentioned that the speech down in Mar-a-Lago, I believe, where Trump said if the hostages aren't returned by Inauguration Day, I think he said in a direct quote, there will be hell to pay. So I'm curious, as you think about now the future of that region, on Truth Social, the president-elect is coming out and saying that we need to further promote peace through strength. This has to be sort of a deal that sticks for the future. How much more important now is it to focus on this region in peace through strength for the president-elect?
Yeah, and Hamas, Hezbollah, you've got the Iranians. They now know that they can't play around with the Middle East and conduct terrorist activities like they've been conducting, because now President Trump's going to be in the White House and he's going to lead through strength. They're going to know that if they conduct terrorist activities, they're going to know that President Trump stands with Israel like the Republican House stands with Israel. And it's going to be a very different leadership coming out of our White House and from the lack of leadership that we've had under the Biden administration. So I'm excited about the opportunities of peace, not just in the Middle East, but throughout the world, because of the approach that President Trump's going to take with peace through strength. And our enemies are going to know that they can't mess with us. They can't attack our allies. They can't attack our service members without there being repercussions to that.
Congressman, speaking of the current administration, you've got the president set to give his farewell address tonight, 8 p.m. Eastern time. I could see a scenario where he takes credit for this.
Of course he will. Yeah, of course he will. He's the current president. He's out on Monday. But we all know, Americans know, that but for President Trump taking a strong stance and saying, hey, there's going to be hell to pay when I get into the office if there's not a deal reached. Hamas knows how he deals with terrorists. And of course, Biden's going to try to take credit for it. But all of us in America, mainstream America, knows that it was because of President Trump's leadership on this that got a deal done.
Let me ask you, sir, just as we talk about global strategic issues, I know you're very hot on the Greenland issue. To me, when you look at what's going on in the Middle East and you look at the risks and you look at our adversaries and you look at the way that they're setting themselves up for global positioning, it just puts the Greenland issue in such stark relief. I don't care what the end result is in terms of buying it or not buying it or whatever. What I want to know is, can we get a definitive defense advantage through a new kind of relationship with Greenland?
Yeah, President Trump can get that done. A Republican House and a Republican Senate can get that done. And I think we absolutely need to do that. If you look at the geography and the strategic location of Greenland as it relates to missile defense systems from both China and from Russia, from shipping lanes in the Arctic region, all these type of things that come together where Greenland is positioned, that is a very strategic national security location for us. I think we need to be very involved there. Again, whether we buy it or whether we negotiate some type of access there. We have a base there now, but we need to strengthen that. President Trump can get that done, and I think that is something that we definitely in Congress need to look to support him on.
Congressman, sticking with foreign policy and tariffs, are you in support of an external revenue service?
I'm not a big fan of creating new government, but I think that what the president's going to do on tariffs will allow us to pay for things and put America policy first. But I've never supported creation of new government. If you look at how I vote on suspension bills, if it creates a new task force, I don't vote for that. So I think there are things like that we can do, taking away from the 80,000 IRS agents that got approved last year, and use those people to create whatever it is that President wants to do as it relates to tariffs. And you can use the people that are already there without creating more government and spending more money.
Congressman, we appreciate your time. Thank you so much for being
anytime.
here today.